creating a history record of your post for 2015-2016. American Legion. We're going to be using the Officer's Guide and Manual of Ceremonies for 2015. This presentation is for post historians, adjutants, commanders, vice commanders, and other interested post members. My name is Gerald McLean. I am the historian for Post 129 in Stillwater. I'm also the historian for the Department of Oklahoma. The reference guide is the Officer's Guide and Manual of Ceremonies 2015, pages 147 to 156. For starters, you must decide if you're going to make a yearbook or a narrative history book for your post. A yearbook is nearly all photographs, images, news clippings with very little text. A narrative has very few photos and mostly all text. Follow the instructions in the Officer's Guide for the current year. Appendix pages 147 to 156. This is also online at this web address. What to collect for the post history book. Prepare a large folder to collect and keep historical items. And you should have close cooperation between the post adjutant, commander, and the historian to keep the records and to put those records into that large folder, so at the end of the year, when you're ready to put your history book together, you have the information you need. Your copies of the post history should be deposited in the local and state libraries, the post and the department archives. This helps to prevent loss of the post history due to fire or misplacement. Post historians should know what the neighboring posts are doing. Sharing between posts will help educate a new historian. Photographs of all meetings or events in JPEG format for easy editing. Photographs should have names, date, location, and event name. What to collect for the post history book? Information about meetings and guests should be supplied from meeting organizer. Information about members who have passed away during the year. You can go to the funeral home's website and gather that information if you don't already have it. All the officers' names and their photographs. The act of the installation of new officers. Events, ceremonies, activities of the post. You want to look at the post history from the charter. Reasons for the organization. Some posts may have an active organization in baseball, so maybe that's one of the reasons for it, to help veterans. Community events where post was active. Newspaper clippings. Research areas to start a new history book. Well, go to the Consolidated Post Report from last year. You can look at that and find out, well, what all was talked about, what was in that consolidated report. Also, you need the national organization's founding with the tie-in to the department and the post. You can go to www.legion.org/history to get that information. Why was the post name selected? Details of selection. Was it someone that died in one of the wars? A brief resume of your community's history. Photograph of the post building and the street address. Other research areas to start a new history book, you want to acknowledge anyone that assists and made contributions to the yearbook. You want to have the preamble to the Constitution of the American Legion. You want to have the current post officer's background with photos. Information from minutes of meetings. Now, you're not going to put the minutes in the history book, but you can take information from those minutes to find out what photographs you might want or what narration you want to talk about. Contact members who were chairs of committees and find out from them what did they do in their committee. Now, this is sort of an outline for a one-year post history. First of all, you're going to start with a cover, a standard 3-ring binder, 8.5 by 11 bonded paper to fit into it. The American Legion emblem should be centered, and the name and number of the post on the outside. I'll talk about the asterisk in just a moment. You also want to have a name and address of the compiler, in other words, the historian, on a 3x5 index card inside the front cover in the lower left corner. Now, this enables that history book to be sent back from the Department of Oklahoma or from the National American Legion organization. On the title page, you need to have this information, just like I have it here. It should say narrative or yearbook history of name of the post and then post number, then the American Legion, city and state for 2015 to 2016 by the person compiling the history, which should be the historian. Now, the asterisk I have up there in that first area right there is simply saying that I would recommend this information actually being put on the front cover of your book. That way that you have the years in there, you have the post number, which is what they want, and you have the person that compiled it. Post history. So right after the title page, you have your introduction. In that introduction, you're going to have the tie-in between the national organization and to the Department of Oklahoma and to your post. Why was your post name selected? Here we go. Community history, connection to the wars and conflicts. The photo of the post building and address. Biographical background of the post commander and the author of the history with photos. Assistance or contributions by other members. The next thing that comes up is a table of contents, the pages of chapters and appendixes. All right? In other words, where is the introduction? Where is different component parts within the introduction and the chapters and the appendixes. You're going to have next the preamble to the Constitution of the American Legion. Then you have chapters. Chapter 1 is the roster of post officers, as a minimum the photo of the commander and the adjutant. So you could have all of the officers' photos if you want. Chapter 2, the roster of post chairmen from the beginning of the post with photos if available. Now this is from the earliest information you have about your post chairman. Chapter 3, this is the big chapter. 1 year post history, everything you do in your post listed in chronological order from installation of officers to the last meeting of the year. This is the most important chapter in your history, complete as possible with all activities. If it's a narration, A narration history book. The historian should relate in narrative form and in chronological order all important events and programs conducted during the year by the post or events. Do not use any photographs or newspaper articles in this chapter of your narrative history. Now, if this is a yearbook history book, the historian should relate in newspaper clippings, photographs, copies of programs, tickets, badges, and other items in chronological order all important events and programs conducted during the year by the post or events. Proper arrangement is a must for eye-catching yearbook. Neatness and originality are important for a yearbook. Other chapters. Use only those that are needed. Activities of standing post committees. Chapter 4, Americanism. Chapter 5, Membership. Chapter 6, Boys State. Chapter 7, School Award Medals. Chapter 8, Oratorical Contest. Chapter 9, Junior Shooting Sports. Chapter 10, Baseball. Now, if you do not use all these, you just simply change the chapter numbering to reflect what you use. Others, activities of post committees. Children and Youth. Sons of the American Legion. Patriotic Observations. Memorial Day, Independence Day, Veterans Day, Flag Day, and so on. Post Parties, Chapter 14. Boy Scouts, Chapter 15. Chapter 16, Honor Guard. Chapter 17, Other Sponsored Groups. Appendixes, after chapters. Charter members and dates of charter. Roster of all past post commanders and adjutants since charter date and years served. Roster of members. Post citations and awards received and presented by post. Records of annual elections showing nominations and votes received. Appendixes. Post membership standing. New members. Life members and puffles. In memorandum, in memorial, or TAPS, or post everlasting. Post constitution and bylaws. Annual budget for your post. Other important statistics that you might have. Now, more details. The last page in your history book is the index. It is a comprehensive index of names, titles, places, and events mentioned in history and with page numbers. It's the last page of the history book. Page numbering throughout the book starts with the title page. Use Arabic numbers 1, 2, 3, and so on, rather than Roman numbers. If a page is left blank, number the page and put "this page left blank" in the center of the page. If narrative history book, emphasis on narrative rather than statistical style. Reader must be able to follow the story of the post through narrative format. History written chronological and detailed account of events arranged in order of time without analysis or interpretation. All in Chapter 3. If yearbook history book, emphasis on images rather than narrative style. Reader must be able to follow story of post through images, history through images, chronological and with detailed account of events arranged in order of time without analysis or interpretation. All in Chapter 3. Reader must be able to follow story of post. Statistics go into the appendix rather than in narrative or yearbook. More details. Illustrations. Photos should be trimmed or edited. Provide left to right subject identification by row. Photos must be clear, not blurry. Photos must have names, date, location, and event name. Avoid using pictures with alcohol or cigarettes in them. Page format suggestions. Use plain or colored paper, 8.5 by 11, typed or computer generated on one side of paper. Use transparent plastic protective colors with 2 pages back to back. 1-inch margin on all sides, double space with 3 to 6 space indentation for new paragraphs and single space for photo identification. Double check spelling. This is the National Judging Standards for a narrative. This is the top of the form. And actually for the yearbook, the top of the form looks the same. You have points given for the cover, the names and address of the compiler, the title page, the introduction, table of contents, preamble, index, page numbering. You can see the points on the right side. This totals up to be 40 points. Now on the bottom of the form, you have Part 2, Part 3, and Part 4. Part 2 is graphic account readability, 30 points. Your narrative, your presentation, chronological order, clear, grammatical, correct. Part 3 is illustrations. Any photographs must have names, occasions, source, dates, and so on. Clear photographs, not blurry or foggy prints. Part 4, the judge will consider some additional things that might be given points for. There may be additional things that are especially attractive or useful in this. And the total points for the first part of the form and the bottom part is 90 points. Now the yearbook, the top of the form is exactly the same as the top of the form for the narrative. There it is, the cover, and now that says 11 by 15 inches. That's not true. It can be smaller than that, as long as it fits a 11 by 17 sheet of paper. Name and address of the compiler, title page, introduction, table of contents, preamble, index, and page numbering. Totals 40 points on this page. The bottom of the form for the yearbook is a little bit different. It's interested in arrangement, the systematic and logical arrangement of the material in chronological order, identification of all photographs, names, occasions, so on, clear photographs, blurry or fuzzy prints will distract from the presentation. That's 40 points. Part 2, judges will consider a number of items that's not readily cataloged under preceding headings. Anything that might be a little more useful or attractive, they can give an additional 10 points. And again, this totals up to be 90 points, counting the top of the form and the bottom of the form. Some more helpful hints. Many posts have never even tried to keep a history of any kind. So now's the time to get started. Begin by researching and compiling as much information as possible from past records. Search local newspapers, files, interview past commanders, adjutants, and older members. You can write the post charter, write to the charter clerk, the American Legion, P.O. Box 1055, Indianapolis, Indiana 46206, and get that charter if you don't have it. Go to local and state libraries for voice recordings of members. Focus on keeping your own records current. The American Legion's 100th anniversary celebration history has a special website to record each post history, pictures, documents, and entire post communities. You can find that at legion.org/centennial. There is an example of Post 129. For more information, contact me, Gerald McLean. My address is 3708 West Deer Crossing, Stillwater, Oklahoma. My telephone number is 405-269-9444. And you can find me on email at geraldmc@suddenlink.net. You may also want to view the American Legion 100th Anniversary Celebration presentation on YouTube, and there is also another example to go to. Thank you.